So the last time I was on A38 was the first time I'd ever come to Hungary in my life, and I had a wonderful, wonderful day because I studied Central and Eastern European history when I was younger, and I'd never been to Budapest before, and that's crazy. So for a week before we got here, I'd been making a map and a list of things I wanted to see and this kind of thing, and I got up in the morning. I got up at, for me, really early. I got up at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I usually get up at like midday, and I walked all the way around the whole city, and I saw, 56 Monument and the church and everything, and it was a really amazing time. And then I tried to learn a bit of Hungarian, but that I've forgotten it since then, so I'm relearning it today. There's a tradition I have at my shows about that I have a song that in English is called Eulogy, and it's a short song. It's only like 8 lines, and a few years ago we were playing in Germany and the show was sold out, and this guy really wanted to get into the show, and as a way of kind of trying to get guest list off me, he translated that song into German for me, and I was like, that's actually really cool. So I sung it in German that night, and then when that went on YouTube, then we were in Swiss Germany, and the Swiss Germans is slightly different, so they did it. Then we were in France, we did it in French, and it sort of became a tradition. And so yeah, I did it in Hungarian last time I was here. I'm going to try it again this time. It's fun, it's difficult, but it's also, the reason I do it is it's a way of showing respect to your audience. If a Hungarian band plays in London, they're going to speak in English between the songs, and everyone just expects that. And I feel like, therefore, in return, if I'm in Hungary, I'm not going to be able to speak in Hungarian for the whole show or sing every song in Hungarian, but just to do a little bit, I think it's a way of kind of respecting your audience. Sometimes I have some guitar parts that I really like that need words, and sometimes I have words that need guitar parts. And quite a lot of the time, actually, the boring part of songwriting for me is I have a pile here of words and I have a pile here of music, and it's just like you pick up one and pick up the other and see if they fit. Sometimes the two come together, and those are usually the best songs, when everything comes at the same time, but that's quite rare. Well, my parents listen to church music. They're religious, and that's fine, but it wasn't something I cared about very much growing up. And then I was 10 years old, and I discovered the music of Iron Maiden, actually because I saw one of their posters and I thought it was cool. And then my friend was like, that's a band, and I was like, what the fuck? So I got into Iron Maiden, and also very soon after that there was the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, broadcast live from Wembley Stadium just after he died. And my older sister and I watched that together, and it blew our minds. You have Metallica, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses, and obviously lots and lots of Queen. And that was kind of my road to Damascus moment in my life. It was like, holy shit, I need to be involved in this. And then I guess straight after that, it's a facet of my personality. The very first thing I thought when I fell in love with this music was, how do I do this myself? I don't want to be a spectator in life. So the first thing I did was I started bugging my parents to get a guitar, and I got one of those shitty, cheap Strat copies that you get from a catalog store for $60 or whatever. I got one of those for Christmas and started playing. And yeah, my best friend lived next door to me, and he had a drum kit, and so we used to play together. It was awful, I'm sure, but it was fun. Well, like I say, right from the word go, I was playing with my friend, and we would play Nirvana covers, and we would play AC/DC covers. I think we wanted to play Maiden and Pantera and stuff like that, but it's way too hard, so we picked the easy stuff. The first song I ever played in the band was Highway to Hell by AC/DC, and then we did Knocking on Heaven's Door, although I'm sad to admit that we thought it was a Guns N' Roses song at the time because we were 11 years old. But yeah, it was a collaborative thing at the beginning, really. In that first band, me and him and this one other guy, we played together for a long time when we were kids, and my writing at that time, because I was writing songs right from the word go, but essentially what I do is I'd write down kind of 12 lines of sort of irrelevant teenage bullshit, and then I'd almost the way I remember it is I'd almost pick 4 random chords and then just play the 4 chords and then and shout over the top of it, and that was the beginning of songwriting for me. Obviously it was terrible, but yeah, that was how it started. From that first band, I played in a bunch of other bands and punk bands and hardcore bands and stuff like that, and even then it's weird. This sounds like a weird thing to say, but like I'm not sure I really thought about songwriting as opposed to just kind of bolting together riffs. It's like, that's a cool riff, this is another one, boom, okay, that sounds cool. And it was only really, I started listening in my early 20s when I was touring with Million Dead. I started listening to a lot more country music in particular, and folk music too. A lot, and you know, stuff like Springsteen, Dylan, Johnny Cash, Neil Young, just that whole world. And that was new to me because, you know, I didn't have anyone sort of telling me where to start in music. So I started with metal and then I went to punk, and the sort of old classics were new information for me. And it was about that point I started thinking about songwriting, you know, as a thing separate from just kind of genres of music or whatever. And then Million Dead fell apart, and I was really pissed off at the time. And I wanted to keep making music, I wanted to keep touring, but I didn't want to have to rely on anybody else because I felt like I'd been let down by the other people I was in a band with. I should add that I'm now old enough to realize that I was probably as much to blame as they were, but it was a long time ago. It's 10 years ago. But yeah, so I just got an acoustic guitar and just started mucking around with trying to write songs, you know, and not just trying to kind of bolt a bunch of riffs together and then shout, but to actually kind of have like a melodic structure and have a flow to the song as a whole. And I guess some part of my brain had been paying attention because I fell in love with, I mean, and it's funny, like in terms of, people spend ages talking about what genre I'm in now, and I couldn't care less. Who cares? I'm a songwriter, that's the only thing I really care about. Yeah, sure, I mean, I'm definitely, certainly in the way that I listen to music, I'm a lyrics guy, you know? It's funny, it's mad to me. I have friends who are like not lyrics people and they just don't ever listen to the lyrics, but they still love rock and roll. And I just don't really understand how that makes sense. That doesn't work to my mind. For me, writing, I mean, it's a form of poetry. I don't think that lyrics and poetry are exactly the same. You know, sometimes people publish books of like their lyrics as poetry. I think that's not right. You know, they're different art forms to me. But, you know, I write about the things that move me to write. I mean, that's kind of a circular statement, but it's like, I'm not kind of writing to sort of put across a political point of view or to sound cool or anything like that. It's more just kind of the purest, hopefully for me, it's the sort of purest art form of what words go in the right order, you know? And you can keep messing around with that for your whole life. T.S. Eliot once said that poems are never finished, they're only ever abandoned, and I think that that's excellent. The Random Act of Kindness thing that we did for this album, I mean, you know, it's a record about kind of, it's a positive record, it's an upbeat record, but we had this idea of just doing a thing online, social media or whatever, to try and, you know, I mean, it's fun, it's interesting, and hopefully it gets people to be kind to each other. My favorite one was a guy had been in a thrift store in the States and he bought a ceremonial sword, right? And then he took it home and he was looking at it and he realized that it was like an individual person's sword, you know, and he was thinking, you know, maybe this is some interesting person. He started Googling it and then he found out that the guy who originally owned the sword had it stolen from him in 1971 and he was still alive, and the guy tracked him down and gave him back his sword, and I thought that was amazing. Well, I mean, you know, there was a time in my life, particularly in my old band, when there was a lot of politics in the music we were making, and, you know, I was a stereotypical angry young man. One of the problems that I've had in my life is that to a certain degree, I've grown up in public, you know, and the things that I said and believed and shouted when I was 18 are not the same things that I say and believe when I'm 34. And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but some people do. You know, there's nothing fanatics hate so much as an apostate. The problem I had is I went from kind of like radical hard left politics to now I would describe myself as a liberal, and as a kind of militant liberal. But you know, some people had a problem with that. Also, the other thing is, so that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened is that as I got interested in songwriting, as we were talking about, I got really bored of people using music as a means to a different end, you know? And it's like, I want to be in a band to talk about politics. I mean, okay, first of all, everyone can do whatever they want, so if that's your thing, that's cool. But to me, that's bullshit. If you're into politics, be into politics. I'm into music because I'm into music. I care about music more than I care about anything else, by several orders of magnitude. And it's just, I don't know, like, political music's pretty one-dimensional and not very interesting to me. History is my passion outside of music, you know, and I try to read widely. And you know, I will never read as many books as I want to read before I die, you know what I mean? Actually, the last history book that I finished was about Hungary. It was about Victor Sebastian's book about 1956. It was a fascinating and moving book. But I don't know, like, I mean, I studied Central and Eastern European history. I'm very interested in and passionate about kind of the first half of the 20th century and the death of Middle Europa as a concept, you know, and communism. I've become very interested in the fall of communism now. That's the thing I read about. But then, I mean, there's loads of stuff. I mean, I've read a lot of books about the Old West in America. Part of me wishes I could be in Dodge City in 1876. That would be pretty amazing. I mean, actually, I don't know whether that's actually true, because I'd probably like get dysentery and get shot, you know. But like, it was a fascinating time for sure. Well, I'm one of those people where all of my tattoos have a long story behind them, and they can be quite boring, I think, sometimes for other people. Well, I've got a pair that I'll explain. So there's a tradition in the tattoo world which comes from the circus, actually, because the Western tattoo tradition comes from the circus. Because circus people were often social outcasts in the 18th century, the number 13 became lucky for the circus. And it's almost like it's a mark of outsider status, you know? It's like to have 13 as your lucky number. So there is a tradition on any Friday the 13th, if you ask a tattoo artist for the number 13 tattooed, they're not allowed to charge you money. So I played, in fact, 4 years ago today, we played at Wembley Arena in the UK. It was my biggest show at the time in London. And that was on a Friday the 13th, deliberately, like I wanted the show to be on Friday the 13th. And I got my 13 tattoo that day. So I got that one, I love that one. But then also, I was born in 1981. And then also 1381 was the year of the Peasants' Revolt, which was the first popular uprising in English history. So I got 1381 on my fingers.
Great, that's a good story.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, that's the short version of that.
You have the Wembleys?
Yeah, I've got Wembley up here. I mean, actually, we played Wembley Stadium with Green Day. And there was a tattooist there, and I just thought, fuck it. And I got a Wembley tattoo with that date on it. And then when we did the arena, I got the second date added. Well, I mean, basically, yeah, the new record was out in August last year. We are planning on touring until sort of August next year, so it'll be 2 straight years for that record, which is a good, solid tour, you know? And then, I mean, I've been saying to myself that maybe I would take a year off and go and, like, walk around Paris for a year or something, I don't know. But the problem is I keep saying that to myself every time we're on an album cycle, and by the time the cycle finishes, I always have, like, a whole pile of new songs that I just want to go straight ahead and record those. I'm writing a lot at the moment. I'm trying to do something very different musically next. I can't really say any more about it just yet because I don't know if my plan is going to work or not. But I definitely want to kind of move into some different areas musically next. But that's a little way off yet.